when you're buying time of people in the West, you're buying time exclusively. And so therefore that 3 months or 4 months, which is in the writer's room, that is like a full 3 month, 4 month buyout.
Yeah.
Whereas over here, I don't think that we are paying them
Enough to just focus on one.
to focus on one.
Yeah.
Part Mike Lee, part Paul Greengrass, partly myself, and try and figure out how to do it so that I'm not handcuffed by the industrial processes of filmmaking.
Ram, it is wonderful to be speaking to you.
No, it's wonderful to be speaking to you because I watch what you say about my work, and I
No
follow.
pressure.
No, I follow what you say about my work, and I have found that even when you're not happy with what I have made, it's not demotivating. It's not said in a brutal way. It's not said in a harsh way, and I'm constantly edge of seat when I'm listening to you saying, I hope he's happy with what I've done, and then when I realize you haven't, which you haven't at times, which is absolutely okay. And no problems on that at all. But what is really heartening is the way that you tell me that yes, maybe this hasn't worked as well. And I think one of the reasons that you also say that is because, like we were saying, I try and tightrope walk a commercial sensibility and a mainstream sensibility with an experimental indie kind of way. And I'm trying to do this, and sometimes I'm not able to perhaps tightrope walk it as well as you would like. But I'm okay with that, but I'm very, very thankful for the way your tone is.
That's very kind of you to say. I do want to ask you about the tightrope walk, but no, as I was telling you earlier, anytime sort of that is a sentiment, I'm always saying it as a fan because I really am a very big fan of your work.
No, but even if you are not a fan, I think that the way, like I have been at the receiving end of other critics, which I have been wounded and bleeding.
Ouch.
And I do read all of it.
That cannot be good for your mental health.
But, on the 7th, which I have to now play, The Waking of a Nation on March 7th on SonyLIV. But I will be reading everything and I'll be watching everything, and I'm already like, sort of, it's like getting your exam results,
There is a lot I want to pick your brain on, but
Yes.
we will of course start with the show that's obviously coming out on SonyLIV. As you said, it is this courtroom drama that follows the investigation into the Jallianwala Bagh massacre. I want to start by asking, a lot of shows in recent times, as well as a lot of upcoming shows, seem to be looking back at the past, at aspects of the freedom struggle or at the early years of independent India. Why do you think that is? Why? It just feels like right now there's a lot of looking backwards.
We all got together 5 years ago, all of us filmmakers.
On the WhatsApp group.
On the WhatsApp group. And we said we must do this all together.
No, but I don't even mean, they're obviously all very different projects
Yeah,
and stories.
no.
I just meant that, is there a specific reason that you felt that?
I did this because I've said this in the past, and maybe I'm now repeating myself. But what happened was that many years ago, I won't tell you my age, so I won't tell you how old that I was then. But I was going on my first trip to London with my mother, and I basically was in economy class. My mother was on the other side, and after it took off, I had to go across, and the kitchen curtain was closed. So that front row which is there. So I tried to go across that front row, not, of course, knowing that that's not an aisle, so technically I should not have, but I asked the white gentleman there, is it okay if I go across? And he said, sit down, you brown bastard. So I went and sat down shaking. And some people may have reacted on the spot or reacted in a different way. I am a scared middle-class boy. I went and sat down, and it took me many years to reply to that man, just in terms of racism, colonialism, the color of your skin, the white man's burden to come and civilize us. The idea that we were taught with how to eat with a fork and knife, of the clothes that we wear, the language that we speak. So. Yeah.
We've all had experiences like that, now that you mention it, and it's always on a flight. Why is it always on a flight?
Have you had an experience?
I have, and I've talked to other people as well who've had similar experiences.
But please tell me, because the idea of being humiliated, and how did you react? And what happened to you?
when I was on a flight, I saw it was a flight where again there were British sort of staff on the flight.
I was British Airways.
Yes, always British Airways, and it's sort of I saw the way they were treating other Indians, passengers,
Right.
and it was very much like, get out of my face, you are lesser than a person.
Yeah,
And,
exactly.
there's something about flights.
Oof.
Yeah.
But I've spoken to other people and other friends. It's not just on the flights, but it happens
Yeah.
a lot too. They've all had some humiliating experience in their lives. This one stayed with me, and I've had softer instances of this sometimes now of course in America it's the color of your money, it's not the color of your skin.
Yeah.
But even in America sometimes if I'm waiting in a hotel breakfast and they'll take so we've been waiting there, but then suddenly we'll discover that some white people have been allowed in and we've not been allowed in, and those are all the soft kind of things also that happen, which maybe I'm now a little more sensitive to, or at least, but I don't do anything about it and I say okay, it's fine, it doesn't matter.
But how did that experience then push you towards this story specifically?
So what it did is that then I began to think about what happened to us and the fact that they came here to civilize us, and they did treat us like, in a way, they kept saying that this is native savages. So, and I think that there was a certain colonization, not just of our land, but there was a colonization of our language, of our brains, of everything that happened to us. And I'm interested in that period. I made a short film some years ago on Sir Cyril Ratcliffe, and basically how did India become India? And I also want desperately to speak about our roots and ourselves.
Yeah.
So,
I'm also curious to know, when you were approaching this project, were there any sort of obvious freedom struggle or courtroom drama tropes that you wanted to steer clear of? Because it's become something of a genre.
yeah. Well, I shoot in a more realistic kind of way. I shoot it with what I call a system 360 with 3 or 4 cameras and with no lights. I don't use lights, all of this, which I don't say action, I don't say color. And I think I've spoken about that in the past. But I think what we are really trying to do is, as usual, to try and bring a certain amount of realism and non-drama. But it is dramatic, but in a way in which it's not melodramatic or it's not jingoistic, but it's something which comes from, like, in fact, that last line which is there in the trailer where Taruk, who plays Kanti, says Hindustan Zindabad, was not even scripted. Okay. It was him, because I'm shooting it live in a way. So it was him who went out there and did it, and then all those 150 people who've all in character, they all responded. And so the energy that you're feeling from that does not feel like as if it is pressing buttons. Yeah. But the references that we did have were for the riot sequences, which is there in episode 2, which I don't think that we have actually sort of arrived to the level that we wanted to, but there is a film called The Battle for Algiers, and then there is Detroit with Catherine Bigelow, and so those were a couple of the films that we were watching more to see how is it that you can be inside a riot, because this is a series about what happens before Jallianwala Bagh and after. In fact, I don't show the massacre, and I show the soldiers coming in, but I don't show really what happened.
Sometimes that's more effective.
I think in this case, because we're showing what happened to the survivors in the commission itself, and then you see the names of the people who actually nobody remembers. So we took with Shantanu Srivastav and Shatrujit Nath, who are my co-writers who've been like at it now for 5 years with me. I think we all decided collectively to do it in a way in which you maintained a certain dignity towards their memory. So that's basically, but the riot sequences, which is really what it's about what happens before and after the massacre, those riot sequences, we had those reference points.
Yeah. You mentioned sort of the conditions you tried to create. The Madhvani method is now sort of famous in
Madhvani method.
But no, you've spoken a lot, and your actors as well have spoken a lot about the environment you create. You've said in the past that you really feel like you're in service of the act and the performance. Right. You do, as you said, you don't do action and cut. Use of lights. You do these long takes. You're really trying to find the truth and reality as far as possible.
And failing a lot of the time, but trying.
It's a very sincere quest.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm very curious to know from you, it might be a silly question, what to you is a good performance? How, what are the hallmarks of a good performance? How do you know something is working? How do you describe that?
So there is a letter which I write to most of my actors. I must say I didn't write it to these 4, but to my other actors in the past, I write a letter which talks about interiority and not exteriority. Okay. I talk about to be versus to show. I talk about the fact that in life there are there's no take two. I talk about the fact that accidents are okay, and I talk about the fact that you don't have the power to say cut. No matter what happens, embrace what is happening. I talk about the fact that you need to be worrying about what's happening before action and after cut, and not just in between action and cut. I talk about the fact that there is something over here where you have a script that we worked very hard on with Shantanu and Shatrujit. For 3 years we worked on that. It's been 5 years since we started, but you don't have to use the script to say what's my line and what's my cue. Right now, if we are talking, you know your questions. I have internalized my answers because I've been part of living it. But I'm allowed to, and you're allowed to speak over me, and we're allowed to have a conversation.
Just be.
And actually make it real and make it honest and make it truthful. And at the same time, I do something what I call as the milestoning. So we know that we're meant to hit these points which are there in the script. And you need to hit those milestones very clearly. But if you want to take a scenic detour to get here, I'm very open with that. Like if Kanti takes a scenic detour and says Hindustan Zindabad at the end, that's a great scenic detour.
Yeah.
So I don't know whether it's coming across by rote, but as you can see, it's inside me like this, and I feel frustrated because the reason I did this is because I don't want to compete with Storaro, and I don't want to compete with Conrad Hall, and I don't want to compete with any of those great people, and I don't want DOPs taking 3 hours and eventually it doesn't really look like anything that we have seen, and I don't understand why we should then follow something which we can't beat. And then I had to invent my own system, which is part Mike Lee, part Paul Greengrass, partly myself, and try and figure out how to do it so that I'm not handcuffed by the industrial processes of filmmaking. ये shot लो, अच्छा ये setup हो गया, next अच्छा सब लोग the whole set changes, अभी ये shot लो, फिर next अच्छा let's change the lighting, अच्छा आप makeup man में जाओ, आप आधा घंटा, no, it doesn't work like that. Let's all be here together
and not be mechanical
and not do it so that अच्छा मेरा look क्या है? Sir, you have to look at the thermocol, sir. Thermocol. वहाँ है ना वो cutter वहाँ. अच्छा वहाँ look मैं वहाँ देता हूँ. And then the fact that the actor can even be on the opposite side and say, what a generous actor, he gave me his lines. I just can't take all of that. That actor has to be there. You have to shoot both those actors. And you have to do it so that this room is basically free for us to do what we feel like.
It sounds like you're spoiling your actors, because after they leave you and move on to another project, they must have a really tough time.
They message me every time, and then they go back to the way films are made, or perhaps, and I don't know how to, I obviously do that when I'm doing advertising. I have an ad film coming up for Airtel day after tomorrow, and I'm very happy that I yet have an advertising career going. It's my riyaz, but I also learned all of this while I was doing advertising. So if I'm doing Har Ek Friend Zaruri Hota Hai, it's in a classroom, I'm shooting with 2-3 cameras. It's eventually a bunch of kids singing a song in a classroom. You can't get more fake than that. But when people saw it, they thought it was real. How can that be real? But I had to make sure that when you saw it, it didn't feel fake.
Even when you just mention it, you can immediately start playing the ad in your head.
Yeah. So this is my riyaz. So I'm happy that I do a lot of my practicing while I'm thanks to the team that I'm working with and to the creative directors who allow me this.
I do want to ask you, what your relationship is with platforms. This is a show that's on SonyLIV. You've done Dhamaka for Netflix. Aarya, which I'm a big fan of, was on what was Disney Plus Hotstar at that time. At one point, you were supposedly developing a big Game of Thrones-ish show for Amazon, which I'm assuming, isn't going ahead. But I'm just curious, as a filmmaker, when you're telling a story, how much does the platform matter? Because they all tend to have slightly different sensibilities and audiences, or does it not matter? It's just, I want to tell the story, and that's it.
So the first thing that I asked Gaurav and Shagato when they were in Disney Plus Hotstar at that time when they came to meet me on Aarya is I wanted to not talk about the script, I wanted to talk about the culture of the organization. Coming from advertising, I feel that my first audience is actually going to be my platform, and therefore if I'm not within their culture and their thought process, then I know that I'll not be able to make it. So a lot of my time is spent, like now Shagato is here, and so a lot of that at SonyLIV, and therefore he's been part of it and he's been listening to various versions and drafts of the script also. And so I know that I'm safe in the conversations that we're having, whether it's with Shogoto, Danish, now Gaurav again, and that I'm within I think what happens is that when you're within a worldview and a like-heartedness, whether you're working with the platform or your actors or your DOP or your team, because this is my team,
Yep.
you know, the platform is my team, and they're actually in a position of great power and greater hierarchy than I am. So I need to be making sure that they have cast me right and I have
chosen
them right in a way in which sometimes I don't have that choice and I don't have that power. But thankfully they said yes, and Shogoto was a safe landing for us, and Danish was a safe landing. So that was like, you know, sort of, so thank you guys.
So is it fair to say that as much as it is the platform, it's also the people you're dealing with there?
It is, because they set the culture.
Yeah.
If I'm working with Airtel, it's Gopal and everybody else who's there who set a culture, and that culture is actually soft. There's nothing over here that you articulate and you say, but you're talking to a brand. That brand has a voice. That voice is something that you need to know and understand, even though they may not articulate it. You need to know what that voice is, so that after you make it, nobody's like sort of saying surprised about, but this is not what we like.
Yeah. You want to be on the same page.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can navigate now over so many years of making advertising. I won't say how long, but over so many years, 2 years of making advertising, I can navigate a room in an honest way, in a creative, honest way, without any ego to it. I'm not here to actually turn around and say, it's my way or the highway. It's our way. It's not just my way. Yeah.
I also have to take this opportunity to pick your brain on some wider industry things, because it just feels like a very interesting time. On the series front, while we're discussing it, again, you've worked on various sort of platforms, and the kind of shows we watch are obviously sort of from around the world. One thing that keeps coming up is the idea that why hasn't there been the definitive Indian crossover show in a world of global platforms,
Right.
Because that's something that a lot of people talk about, where is art, call it Squid Game, call it Shogun, etc. Do you think that that's something that is in our immediate future? Do you think it matters as much? Do you think we should be giving it that much importance?
I don't know whether we can not. I have no clue about any of that, whether, all of that. I think whether we should not, I have no clue about all that. What I do know is that the more that I try and make myself rooted, and like the saying says, the more particular you are, the more universal you will be. And so I feel the more particular I am and the more rooted I am, the more chances of us reaching out.
Yeah.
So I don't want to necessarily, I like to make shows which are internationally Indian, but eventually it's Indian.
Yeah.
So I mean, I know it's cliche to be saying all of this.
Yeah, but I know what you mean.
But basically, I was in NYU for a while. My brother was in New York, and I was given the opportunity of maybe living there or working there, and I said, no, I don't want to be that kind of filmmaker. I want to be here and make work for first this country.
Yeah.
And then if it works here, let's see how it can work elsewhere.
I think that's a great sort of way of going about it, because that's the whole idea, right? Like if it works here, that's what matters most, and that's the only way it might work elsewhere.
Exactly, yeah. And I think we've had it in the past, even with Aarya, which went on to the
International Emmys.
The nomination for the Emmys, etc. Which, like, I was also like, when it first came on TV, I was like, we were editing, I think Aarya season 2 or something, and we said,
this is pandemic.
Yeah, that's right. And we were working, and Khushbu, who's my editor, and then was also the EP and the writer also of season 2. And so we said, theek hai, and we continued working. And then later when the messages started coming, and we said, oh, acha, this is a big deal.
It very much is.
Yeah, it is a big deal. When you're in that room, Suchin, I can't tell you. It's a room full of, you feel like you're in Star Wars, okay, in some strange accents, with strange clothes of people from all over the world, and they're all speaking in different languages and different tongues, and then you're there within one table speaking in your tongue, and like, but you're yet feeling like as if this is all together, and you feel like you're sitting in some Star Wars ka bar or something, where there are strange characters all around who you are saying, wow, we're here. It's a great feeling.
Yeah. And I have to also tell you, as an audience, it's also wonderful when the right show gets that attention and gets nominated.
Right.
And it's very heartening.
Well, I don't know whether it was something which eventually, sort of, these are things which I don't know how they happen.
Yeah.
I then became jury member for
Oh, wow.
season, no, for the, because once you win something, then you become a jury member. And so for the next year. And so you're meant to see 4 of the final, and you're then meant to cast your vote on one of those 4. Other people see, I think, 600. And out of the 600, then the 4 comes to us. And I had thankfully seen 3 of them, and the 4th one I hadn't seen. But that's how it works. And so then you have to, obviously, you're voting online and all the rest of that. But the show that I voted for won.
Were you in that position then shopping for your next Pinoza, something to adapt? What's like the next exciting
So
thing?
I decided, I don't know whether I will continue doing that, but I decided I won't do a remake.
Yeah.
Because even with Dhamaka, it was a remake, and Karthik, suggested that I make it. I've spoken about that in the past. And I told Karthik, "Arey yaar, Karthik, mere ko remake nahi karna hai yaar, because now with
You'll get slotted as that guy.
Yeah, and I have no hassles. And you can remake Shakespeare, and you can do all of that, and we all know all those sort of conversations and talks about that. But I felt that I needed to do something which was coming from inside me, and that's why I feel that this is in some ways something that has been troubling me for a while, like I said. And so coming back to The Waking of a Nation, March 7th on SonyLIV.
Speaking of remakes versus adaptations, I have to say Aarya is one of the very rare true blue adaptations we have. You adapted it because we do live right now in a sea of remakes where it is a very lazy scene. And that's one of the reasons that makes that so special. I have to ask you, just as a fan, what sort of, it just felt like the 3rd season of the show wasn't the same as the first.
Right.
And so I just wanted to ask you, is it, again, what you were talking about, straddling that line? Because that first season, it's something I still think about.
Right.
And it really is a show you still feel. It really was one of the few testaments to what a Hindi streaming show could be.
No, thank you for that. And I think what happened with Aarya was I was meant to make it into a movie 8-9 years now, I don't know, 10-12 years ago. And it didn't happen, the movie. And obviously it was very disappointing. And like I scheduled my tears and I cried for like 24 hours. And it fell through maybe 3 or 4 weeks before it was meant to actually go on floors. We had done all of it. And then when it didn't happen, and then what happened was that for 7-8 years, it was on the shelf. But for 7-8 years, I kept thinking about it. Yeah. And my biggest thought was, this is a woman who's going to put her father in jail. And will the Hindi film audience, or will any audience, allow, without portraying the father as really a bad guy, will the Indian audience, एक बेटी ने अपने बाप को जेल में डाला. So at the end of the show, that means you have sarangi music. It's you don't have a woman who's now going to be walking away with dan 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 dan. You don't have that kind of music, and I felt that therefore the show may be at the end a bit of a downer, because you may feel, should she have done that? Should she not have done that? And then when it took me some 4 or 5 years to crack it. Okay, and I said, okay, now I know what to do with this. Culturally rooted, I had cracked because my nieces come from that milieu in Rajasthan, and I've been to their families' homes and all the rest of that. So I'd known where this was coming from. And what it didn't, thematically I didn't know what to do till I then got to the Bhagavad Gita, and I said, okay, अपना कर्म और धर्म है, as long as you know कि एक माँ अपनी बच्ची के लिए कुछ भी कर सकती है, तो वो बाप को भी जेल में डाल सकती है, क्योंकि वो पहले माँ है, वो पहले बेटी नहीं है, वो पहले बीवी नहीं है, वो पहले माँ है. So as soon as you put your dharma in that hierarchy, which is an ever-changing kind of concept, but once you do that, then I said, now I know that when she puts her father in jail, it's going to be uplifting because she did it for her kids. Yeah. So all of this, I think what happened with Aarya 1 was that it came from a lot of cooking, a lot of time, and then these things are, a little alchemy also. You don't know in filmmaking. I can control the process, like I keep saying, but I can't control the outcome. Obviously, when I received even actually 3.1, because they release it
in 2 parts.
In 2 parts, 3.1 and 3.2. And we did get feedback, because I'm always asking the platform, what are the numbers? What do you feel? How's it working? What shall we change? How's the audience? Because I'm, of course, interested in what I'm saying, but I'm very, very interested in what you're feeling. So if I haven't reached out to you, then I actually should not be here, because I'm in the business of feelings. I have to make you feel. Yeah. So we did eventually, I think, I felt we landed safely. and through the numbers we did land safely. I know that there was a lot of people, certainly within our community, who did not quite embrace it as much as they did, for the first season. Like now, what can I say? It's part of the continuing journey of just practicing something that is out there.
Yeah. But do you think, I'm curious to get your thoughts, because you're someone who really gives a lot of time to get something right. You live with a project for years. Do you think that this whole idea of subsequent seasons, which is a relatively new concept here, it feels like in the US there is an entire industry and infrastructure that supports that. Yeah. Do you feel like we're still grappling with how do you land that? Because it takes a lot of time to write a season of television.
This is one of my favorite subjects. I think one of our problems is, and Udayan, who's our creative VP, we've been talking about it, which is that when you're buying time of people in the West, you're buying time exclusively. And so therefore that 3 months or 4 months, which is in the writer's room, that is like a full 3 month, 4 month buyout. Yeah. Whereas over here, I don't think that we are paying them
enough to just focus on one.
To focus on one. Yeah. And that means, however, the time is yet the same. That means you're yet expecting a turnaround, which has come from the West without a model or a financial model that has come from the West. The time model has come there, the system model has come from there, but the monetary model has not come from there. And so as a result of which, I'm finding that to work to a certain now it's going to be 6 months, and in 6 months we're going to finish writing, and then and you know what, we had a whole board here for a new show that we were doing, and we're very, very organized, and we're very systematic, and like I had said, May 12th 2025 is when we will have our budget. Okay, it's just gone completely haywire because we could not do it. Not that we didn't do it in Aarya 1 and 2, but on this one we couldn't do it, and it wasn't even the writer's fault or my fault.
But if the infrastructure doesn't support it,
it's something which, if you're going to take time on two areas. One is writing, but then there comes development money, there comes development, sort of interest. There's all of that, which is also something that I understand that the platform is going through. And I'm completely okay with that, because yes, you can't just have it never ending. But that's why I found that The Waking of a Nation was not developed by a platform. Aarya season 1 was not developed by a platform.
And that was key.
And that was key because it took us 3 years, and that's how long it needed. Which is not to say that I'm saying, no, we need time, etc. But I think maybe what we need to do is find a way that we can make it financially okay, or if not, then we can make it. I do have a producer hat on when I'm talking about this. I'm not just talking about it being creative, kind of hat. No, I want to work. I work to time. I'm very, very cognizant of that. Okay, and I shoot to time. I'm very worried about time. But at the same time, maybe what we need to do is figure out for ourselves through a conversation which says, do we really believe that this is going to happen, and what are the ways that we can make sure that monetarily also we are responsible, fiscally responsible to the platform and to ourselves. And those are conversations that must be had.
I think the question I would add on to that, probably more for the platforms than anyone else, is does quality matter to you? Because if it did, you need to give them the time and the money, etc. And if it is just about churning out content, which is a word I hate, if you're operating like a factory, then maybe that's not your objective.
But I don't think that anybody over here is actually wanting to work like a factory. Neither the platform nor us. Okay. I mean, we're all out here to do good work, great work if we can. But nobody sets out to be mediocre or factory-wise, or even sort of bad or whatever. But I think the thing is that how are we? I would love to make 12 things a year, okay, but I have to make those 12 things in a way in which I need to yet be completely sure that I have figured a way. Because see, a shoot works to a schedule. That does not mean that I'm compromising. If a shoot works to a schedule, how can we make writing work to a schedule? And I think there are ways that we can figure that out without it becoming a factory. Okay, we just have not, we've adopted a method which is not our own. And I think the film industry is uniquely got our own system you know.
For better or for worse.
And which is a good thing.
Yeah.
And in fact, I think more and more we should embrace our own system.
Yeah. But I did want to ask you about that because a lot of filmmakers like you that I've spoken to recently, these make these stories that you very much remember and respect and embrace. They've said that if they want to make something theatrically, the brief from the industry, from producers, the conversation they have is go bigger. If you want to make something theatrically, I want spectacle, I want a cinematic universe, whatever that looks like. Do you feel that pressure as well? That right now, if I want to make the theatrical film, the only way to do it is I have to go bigger? Even if it's not something that...
No, I wanted to go bigger in any case. There's no harm in going bigger.
Yeah.
I've gone bigger in The Waking of a Nation with the scale and one day we had 862 people on set. And so it was something which, and and I've made big ads also. Whether I'm doing that out of just because audience will come to see something bigger, no, I'm not doing that because of that. And I don't even know whether they'll allow me to make what I want to make next. That's a whole new thing. But given what has happened today at the Academy and at the Oscars,
with the Nora.
Yeah, I mean that's all like long live indie movie making and
there
all
is
the
hope.
rest. Yeah, so there is. I think all of this is all something which is like ours is not to like what ours is just to do and die.
Yeah. I also have to pick your brain on a few things related to tech. We talked about virtual reality just now, and that was such an interesting, immersive experience. That 5 minute show.
In fact, that's one of the nice things about the immersion is that nowadays I'm not able to show somebody my trailer, which is 2.5 minutes, without 3 phones ringing. And that person saying, "Oh, sorry, message," or phone. So the nice thing about virtual reality, because even in the theater now, it's no longer immersive because there is people walking in, out, there is pizza, there is pav bhaji, there is everything which is all happening and everybody's talking and everything is all happening together, it's like one community hall. And I feel today, in fact, we should embrace the community hallness of the theatre.
Interesting.
We are going there for a community experience. We are going there for an experience where, first of all, the theatre is the only place where you can actually cry in public because you can't do that on a plane on your phone. This is the only place where you can laugh collectively together. And so more and more I'm feeling that the kind of movies that are working is where there is this collective energy of ras, which is what you're feeling, which is what you should be feeling, because it's not meant to be a private experience, it's meant to be a group experience. So I think if you get that group experience, then I think that the film works. But if you're not getting a group, if you're getting a solo experience, then maybe the film is not for the theatre. So
I've always said that I think the smallest, most intimate, most emotional story is the best way and the only way to watch them is on the big screen, to feel every fiber of it. The scale and the spectacle of it does not matter.
In fact, sometimes I wonder what makes for a
I think
OTT
Neerja is actually a great example of this. You're in that hall, you're feeling that, and everyone is feeling exactly what you're feeling.
Yeah. And anyways, I like tragedy. I like making people cry.
You're good at it. Intentionally.
Intentionally, and I like the idea of catharsis. I feel that catharsis is something that we don't get because we blocked out the news, we blocked out everything in our lives, and therefore you need to get cleansed by actually crying. But I feel also that when you're watching something now with VR, you are actually given the ability to watch it non-distracted, immersive. So when you use the word immersive, that was what movies were meant. You were meant to get lost in that world, but you can't get lost in that world with, street cries of the hawker going by.
So you think that VR could be bringing that back to us?
I feel that,
interesting.
Unless, of course, soon we'll be making phone calls on VR.
Some family WhatsApp call, I don't want to be making in that format.
Exactly.
Too many.
Just watch until those screens come there on VR, and you're basically like they're right there.
That's when Zoom calls become horror movies. Before I let you go, I have to ask you a bit of a marketing question. You are this respected mind in the world of advertising and films. You think so much about audiences and storytelling. It feels like in 2025, it's never been harder to grab the attention of an audience or just let them know something exists.
Yeah.
So I wanted to get your take on that. Like, how does it feel harder than ever, and how do you navigate that, where you've made a very sincere series, you really want to get it out, or it could be sort of a film or whatever it is. How do we navigate that where there's so much coming at us all the time? You just want to let an audience know this exists, and how do you find your audience?
So out of the 3 things that we need One is obviously the making of it, which I think sometimes is like this. It's very hard, but it is just 1/3 of this thing. And the second is the distribution of it, which is the second third, and the third is actually the marketing of it. And you know, sometimes I feel like I'm that street hawker down there. I live in Prabhadevi, and you know, thankfully I yet hear street cries of that guy saying, "Hey, Vasun," and like that's what I'm doing right now.
But I feel like you have to, right?
I have to. I have to go out there and say, "Hey, Bhaji," and then when I'm like, you know, sort of when I'm down there below your building, that's the world's oldest marketing cry. I have to go out there, and if I don't tell you I'm below your building selling Vasun, then you won't know that I'm below your building. It's only because you heard me in that voice saying it, because you know, it's like I did an ad many years ago for Premsand's Bazaar where it was like saying, "Hey, Versace, 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 Versace." Okay, osh kosh bigosh, osh kosh bigosh.
So that's what you have to do in 2020.
That's what I'm doing. With you just now.
Yeah.
That's what I'm doing.
But I mean, there's a limit to how much you can do that. So how
there is a financial limit, especially for a show like The Waking of a Nation, which has relatively 4. There's Taruk Raina, there's Nikita Datta, there's Baushil Singh, and there is also Sahil Mehta. They've been around, but at the same time, they're not like, you know, some, like I have found that when I'm looking at, but I'm so happy that Sony agreed and Shogoto and Danish agreed that we could cast it correctly. We auditioned some 200 people. There was Abhimanyu Ray as our casting director, and they got it out of merit and talent, and they agreed to that. SonyLIV said, yes, go ahead with that, and thank God and hats off to that, because, and therefore there is a certain purity of age and a purity of the casting which is there in the show, and I think that is what you will receive. But yes, it does mean that will I be able to penetrate as much as perhaps Aarya did? I don't know. I guess
we live in the hope that the right story told well is going to always find its audience.
No, sometimes it doesn't. And I know a show in SonyLIV called, which I love.
Tabar.
No, not just Tabar, but there's another show called Raat Jawan Hai.
Raat Jawan Hai. It's the best show of last year.
I agree with you 100%.
Best show of last year.
Okay. Please go see 2 things. One, go and see Raat Jawan Ho on SonyLIV. Also see The Waking of a Nation on March 7th.
Back to back.
Back to back. That's a great show.
Yeah.
But I don't think people know about it.
Yeah.
And I think that's really sad. And I'm hoping that with everything that we are doing, and thanks to Mahalakshmi who's sitting there behind us, and thanks to the team, I'm hoping that we will be able to get it out there in a way in which people get to know. I also feel that my subject matter, which is the Jallianwala Bagh, is already within the cultural consciousness and the DNA of the people. And so therefore, perhaps by my choice of material, sometimes the casting helps, sometimes the very choice of material helps. And I chose this 5 years ago because we do have 8 or 9 things that we look at before we go ahead. And apart from the casting and the distribution, we look at the plausibility, the feasibility, but most importantly, we look at the cultural piggybacking, and we look at the cultural DNA. And we are hoping that because we are saying this is something that you know about the massacre, but you didn't know about the conspiracy, I'm hoping that that itself, which is the subject matter itself, is something which will, in a way, at least you may like it, you may not like it, but at least it will, your ears will get perked up when I'm out there saying, "The Waking of a Nation."
I can confidently say this is subject matter it is impossible not to feel very strongly about.
Yes.
So you're absolutely not wrong there. But thank you so much for this.
Yeah, thank you so much,
we very much look forward to the show.
No, thank you so much for being, kind in the way that you speak and the way that you actually tell me where the problems of what I'm working on or where I need to course correct. And I'm here listening. I want to try and see how I can reach out to various kinds of successes. I want popular success, I want critical success, I want commercial success, I want it all.
Cheers to having it all.
Yes.